Thank you, everybody, for joining us for today's webinar. We are really excited about this topic here. I'm Christian Benak. I am the founder of NextBigWin. So I know I've seen a lot of familiar faces, familiar names, you should say. So thanks for everybody who's joining us here today. And yeah, this is a really interesting topic. I'm speaking with a lot of CMOs these days. I'm hosting a CMO Journeys podcast, and one of the topics that keeps coming up again and again is how brands are showing up in AI generated answers and what it means for their teams and the agencies, supporting them as well. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to break down AI search is how it's reshaping discovery, how to measure visibility, and how to connect that back to real business impact. As I mentioned, we will have the chat open, so feel free to leave questions. I'll be moderating, so I may jump in and ask the question in the moment, or we might hold them to the end. The plan is to have probably a good 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A at the end there. So joining me today, I have, first off, let's talk a little bit about what we're going to cover more specifically. So today, what we're going to specifically go over is how AI search is reshaping how brands are discovered, how to measure your brand's visibility inside AI-generated answers, how AI recommendations influence customer consideration and demand, and how to connect AI visibility to pipeline and revenue impact. And joining me today is a great group here. We have Satish, who is the founder of Crossfill, and they help brands understand and improve how they show up across AI search and the answer engines. I also have Kirk Nielsen, the co-founder of Tapin Digital, and they are focused on helping organizations measure and connect marketing activity, including emerging channels like AI search. And then we also have a client, Michelle Sue from Cerebral Capital, and she's going to bring a real-world perspective on how this shift is playing out within her organization. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Satish to get us started.
Thank you, Christian, and hello, everybody. Very happy that you are here, and thanks for the opportunity to talk to you about this shift that's happening in search. So, as you know, the move to AI search has gone even, I would say, faster than what anybody imagined. So now more than two-thirds, 69% of searches do not return any click because these are done by these so-called LLM-based answer engines. As of February 2026, we are almost trillion, 900 million plus ChatGPT users, 750 plus million Gemini users, and not surprisingly, a lot of users prefer AI search over the traditional search. And another shift that is coming is that ads are coming. ChatGPT ads went live earlier this year. And so you now have like another brand new paid channel that has been born inside AI, just like the traditional search to AI shift is this big shift. The paid search from traditional click-based payments to this AI payments is going to be another seismic shift that's coming. So, and in this shift, one of the things that you don't see in any dashboard is that when somebody makes a search and your competitor shows up and you don't show up, you don't see that anywhere. You don't see that as an impression. You don't see that as a click. You don't see that as a bounced. It's just a lost demand, right? So how often your brand gets cited, how often it gets recommended, and how much coverage you have in the prompts, those make a big difference. More so, much more so than what it was in traditional search, because you don't have like this endless scrolling. You might have shown up later in the search results, but now if you don't show up in the top 3, it just means that you have lost that customer. So if you go to the next slide, this is an example that we ran where in ChatGPT, if you ask the question, what is the best place to buy dog food online? It shows Chewy, Amazon, and PetSmart. So if you're Petco, you're not in the answer. So you are just invisible. Most customers are not going to find you. And with the shift that we talked about, where the searches are going to AI search, that means that you just lost this customer. And another thing that we have found is that these customers who come from these AI search engines are highly engaged. They have more than 10x engagement of what a regular search customer does. Their bounce rates are extremely low. We have seen like very low bounce rates. So again, if you are not showing up in some of these answers, that means you have just lost a very high quality user, and you don't see that in any of your dashboards.
So we wanted to do a quick little poll here. Let me pull this up here for everybody. So we'd love to know, how well do you think that you or your clients are showing up in AI answers right now? So we'll let you guys fill that out, and then we'll come back to the responses here in a moment. But Satish, if you want to move forward here. I think you might be muted, Satish.
Thank you. Going back to what I was saying, the other big thing, again, a big shift from traditional search to AI search that we are seeing is that AI search answers are concentrated. So the top three brands get most in the answers, get most of the oxygen. And if you build an early momentum, that just compounds. So when what we have found, for example, is that if you have not been in the answers, if you have not updated your content that these answer engines can ingest, then you are losing momentum, and then it becomes harder and harder to break into that. So they do favor brands that they have already cited. And what you do, and we'll talk about this later, what you need to do to appear in an AI search is semantic relevance, not keyword relevance. So when somebody is asking a question like, what is the best running shoe for plantar fasciitis? It's no longer like the keyword. It is whether the LLM considers what you have out there to be relevant to this, to this question. You can go
Right.
to the next slide.
Yeah, I'll pull up. I don't know if you guys can see the poll. Can you see it, what I'm throwing on the screen right now, or should I just read it off? Yeah, okay. So the results of the poll, we had only 4%, or I'm sorry, 7% said very well, 18% fairly well, 37% some visibility but inconsistent, 18% limited visibility, and 21% not sure. So by and large, I would say more than half, not really consistent and not showing up as much as they would like. So not surprised. This is why we're here, right?
So I talked about this a little bit in the previous slide. In the AI search, what you're seeing is that it's no longer you're being ranked. It is selecting which brands are winning this, right? So when I do my own search, when I make an AI search, I just go by whatever Gemini or ChatGPT shows me. At that point, I'm done with my research, right? So while in a traditional SEO, you are optimizing for your ranking, in AI, you are ranking for visibility and recommendation probability. So this is a big shift from what is happening in the traditional SEO in terms of CTR and keywords to getting recommendations, citations, mentions in the answer visibility and authority. And how you do that is one of the things that we are going to be talking about, and the impact that it can have, the huge impact that it can have if this is done right. So one of the questions that we get asked all the time is, how does this so-called answer engine optimization, AI SEO, generative engine optimization, GEO, whatever you want to call it, fit with whatever has been or you are doing in terms of awareness, SEO, and conversion paid media? And our view is at this point, while the AI paid search is ramping up, this works in conjunction with everything else that you are doing, right? It doesn't replace, obviously, what you're doing. It's very important, it's growing, but it doesn't replace what you're doing. It works with what you are seeing. So with that, I'll actually turn over to Michelle because she has a lot of experience doing this. And Michelle, do you want to tell us a little bit more about how you have been thinking about GEO and how it fits with the existing channels that you're working with?
Yeah, so we are very much performance marketers, and a lot of our lead gen comes from paid media, bottom of the funnel type stuff. And what we're learning is, although we're on SEO, and that does help us, we've never been a leader in SEO. We've really been focused on the paid media. What we're finding with the big shifts in paid media, particularly Google search, which is where we do PPC, we're seeing a lot of disruption there. And we need AI visibility, which is why we're working with Crossfill to help in that gap, and also help be visible when they are in the, customers in the consideration mode before they go to paid media, where that really sort of works hand in hand. We are not seeing right now where an AI visibility strategy is going to replace paid media yet. That might come, but I don't think we're there. So we're sort of seeing it as it works together with our existing channel. If you want to go to the next slide, we can talk about the metrics on AI visibility that are really important to us and what we focus on. We focus on revenue. That is the most important thing that comes out of marketing. I know Kirk is going to touch on how you take these metrics and decide what revenue is coming from it. But just in the AI channel, what we look at is brand share of voice, which is when your competitors show up for your high intent prompts, are you also showing up, right? So what percent is your brand name showing up either in a citation or in a recommendation where it is a commercial prompt? This is super important. This ties back to what Satish was saying about lost customers. You need to make sure that you are there if your competitors are there. The other things that we look at is citation frequency, which is in the LLM, in the AI search, are your pages being cited as a source, as an authority signal? Prompt coverage, which is just of all the prompts that you decide are important to you for your company, how often are you showing up? Whether your competitors show up or not, right? How often are you showing up for your prompts? We also look at competitive inclusion gaps, which means for our important prompts, are our competitors there and we're not? And we can take a look at that and say what pages of theirs are being cited, and can we then create content that answers that question, and we can be part of that answer. And then sentiment and context. If somebody mentions your brand or LLM mentions your brand, is it positive or is it negative? And that's really important to track as well. So we've been working with Crossfill since last summer, and we focused on, we were not visible. Like I said, we weren't very heavy on SEO as well. And we took one of our very important business channels, acquisition loans, and said, okay, what can we do here? And I was expecting it was going to take at least 6 months to see any sort of results. And we saw results like within 2 weeks. It was amazing. And what happened was we took an existing blog post and optimized it for what the LLMs want to see. And the LLM engineers took our existing content and structured it in a way through language, through citations, through things that are not relevant in SEO, the way that languages are, the way that sentences are structured, for example, and did their magic. And what we saw was within 2 weeks, we went from 0 visibility to being the #1 recommended acquisition loan solution for businesses. Was amazing. So, our next step is to take all of our prompts and do all of this for our entire business not just for this acquisition financing piece. So this was absolutely phenomenal. How quickly we could actually get recommended, and we've held it, which is to Satish's point, kind of once you're in there and pushing your competitors out, it really does give you an advantage if you're early. And this is just a screenshot showing for acquisition best lender network for middle market business loans. Google AI Overviews shows us as not only a mention, which means that your brand is mentioned in the answer and recommended, but on the side, it is also showing citations and particular pages for our website. And you can see that we're like showing up in the brand names. Cerebro Capital is listed #1, SmartBiz, Lendio, Bank of America, right? So it really gives a tremendous authority to being recommended by an LLM. And I'm going to throw it back to Crossfill.
Thank you, Michelle. And so Michelle talked about some of this in terms of now, how do you get into the answer? What is the magic that our machine learning is doing to make this happen, right? So the first thing is we look at what our ML system does is looks at the structure and the content that is there, right? So both the content and the structures. So we make sure that the LLMs, so we sort of like feeding the content in a way that the LLMs can ingest very easily. So in my example that I gave, when a user asks, what is the best running shoe for plantar fasciitis? So if you have a fact, for example, on your site that says, what is plantar fasciitis and what are the considerations and what is the best running shoe and why your shoe is the best, that's a lot more likely to be picked up by the LLM as semantically relevant as opposed to what somebody else who maybe just tangentially refers to it. So it has to be structured in a way that the LLMs understand. The second thing is targeting some of these high intent generative prompts that users are asking. And like Michelle mentioned, both the mentions in the answer itself and the citations, because a lot of times right now in the mention, you don't have a URL. It doesn't link back to your site. But when you see the citations, then it will actually link back to your website or your blog and so on. So having that is hugely important. And then what we also do is we look at not just your content that's being cited, but what are some of the third-party sites that are being cited, or those editorial or those news, and we can help with placements and partnerships that then drive those content towards more of your brand as opposed to other brands. So this sort of like the three-pronged strategy. What we have found is that makes a huge difference in the citations, in the visibility, in the traffic, and finally the revenue that it drives. So big takeaway is that we are no longer optimizing for keywords. We are optimizing for the recommendation probability. And like we discussed before, that makes the biggest impact in terms of what you see. Because if you're not in the top 3, if you're not recommended, you just lost the traffic.
Okay. So before we move on to Kirk, I'm curious if there are any questions. Maybe we could take 1 or 2 questions now. If anybody has any, throw them in the chat here. If not, we can move ahead. I'm not seeing any come through yet, but yeah, we can. Oh, here we go. Greg Myers asks, Google My Business rankings / feedback, do they make an impact or improve your AI ranking?
So I think what the question, if I understand it correct, is saying that if you Google your own business name, does it help? Those kinds of things generally do not help because the answer engines are looking for semantic relevance. What folks have had some success with is influencing third party content, your user generated content, whether that's reviews, whether that's things like Reddit, YouTube, and of course, the low hanging fruit is your own content that's out there. If your content is not structured in a way, that is the primary lever right now.
Sure. Another question from Holly is, what is the best tool to determine which prompts are used that are returning your brand and search results?
I'll give a quick answer and then would love to hear from Michelle as well on that. What we have found is obviously the search prompts are the companies like OpenAI and Google know that they don't share that data. Folks who claim to have that data don't really have that. The source of truth for us has been things like Google Search Console and GA, because there you can actually see what are the prompts. You can see what the increase in the traffic to those prompts have been. Michelle, anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I use also Google, since we're on Google PPC, I use the search queries that people are actually entering in. If you on the insights and the search terms, that's super helpful. There are also tools out there that will generate prompts for you if you give it your website. We found those to be mediocre. It's actually better if you use the data that you get through Google Analytics or Google PPC.
Sure. And Satish, just to clarify that one question, I think what was actually being asked is the Google My Business listing. You're familiar with the My Google Business listings. I think they were asking that if that specifically has an impact on AI answers versus you actually typing and Googling your own business.
Yeah, I can share with you our experience is that that has not been a primary driver. Things like if you can get into Wikipedia, that would be a bigger driver because Wikipedia has a higher source. So you should definitely try anything and everything. Even a small improvement can make a big difference. But we are talking about the biggest levers, and we haven't seen that as a big lever.
We have seen, in addition to the content on your own site, Wikipedia page, but also Reddit. So if you can post in Reddit in a quality way, and Reddit's a special place, so you want to make sure you understand the culture. But if you can become an answer person within Reddit, that moves the needle a lot as well.
Great. So I know there's a few more questions in here, but we'll pause. And there is one which is a good segue. One was about AI visibility and revenue growth, which I think that is a good segue into what Kirk is going to be talking about here.
Yeah, thanks, Christian. Thanks for everybody for attending. Thanks to Satish and Michelle for sharing all the great insights from the work that you've been doing together. So I'm excited today to talk about a new era of organic measurement. So a lot of the clients that we've been working with and a lot of our peers in the industry, we've been hearing this question a lot. How do I understand the impact of AI search and the shift in the organic landscape on my business? I think the biggest challenge that's come up with this is the organic playbook has been very straightforward for a very long time. You optimize for rankings, you drive clicks, and you measure performance. That's something that marketers have been doing for decades at this point. But really, the way that we've been thinking about it and talking with our clients is we've got to take in a broader picture at this point. And so there's really four components that we're thinking about. So number one is, what is the value of AI-driven search? What is the value of traditional SEO? What is the combined impact of both of those on your organic program? And then number four, which is very critical, how is that trending over time? So am I getting better? Am I the same? Is it worse than historically before AI search came into the picture? Moving to the next slide, talking about traditional SEO, marketers are very familiar with this. With Google Search Console, I can see all the impressions on the keywords I care about. I can see all the clicks on the keyword searches I care about. I know where I'm ranking. I know what the click-through rates look like. I can then track that into my web analytics platform so I can see how many visits I'm getting, what the conversions look like, how much revenue is being generated. Very straightforward funnel to track, with lots of robust data to understand how that program is performing. But as we all know, that is changing. If we go to the next slide. So the new problem with AI search, and Michelle and Satisha both hit on this, is this changes the search interaction. So somebody goes to an AI-powered answer engine, they prompt a question, they get an answer, and there's typically not a click associated with that interaction. So that click tracking breaks down, and now somebody may be going directly to your website, or they may be going, back to Google and coming through a paid ad. There's all sorts of variation that's taking place, and that's really broken this attribution for the way consumers are behaving with AI search. And there's another component of this kind of invisible influence of I'm getting impressions now from AI answer engines on my brand. What is the impact of generating those impressions via these engines? So some more details about, the different data that the marketers are losing with AI search. So we can no longer see search impressions. We no longer see clicks, obviously. We're not seeing any click-through rates. We're no longer able to attribute in a very clear way the traffic that's being generated and the revenue that's being generated. And then there is this halo effect that's being created that's going to be very difficult to see without the proper measurement in place. If we go to the next slide, I want to just walk through a quick use case to depict this. So a user searches best marketing measurement company. The AI overview shows Tap In Digital. The user later then visits the Tap In Digital website directly. So there's no clicks captured in this. 100% of the credit is going to go to direct traffic to my website. And then that kind of demand layer, that impression layer of seeing Tap In Digital, there I'm not going to understand the impact of that impression and what that actually drove for me. So I think we understand kind of the problem, lack of click-based attribution, more of an impression-based attribution system is needed. So let's jump into the solution. So the solution really is to expand what you're measuring. So obviously, marketers are going to continue to track traditional SEO. You've got to add AI visibility monitoring, all the great things that Satish and Michelle were talking about, to your playbook. And then the third component is this now requires advanced measurement to understand the impact. With everything that we talked about in, impression-based, lack of clicks, being able to bring that visibility in, you need media mix modeling and advanced measurement to understand the impact and understand how to tie that to revenue. If we jump to the next slide here, Christian. So on SEO, the SEO playbook is still the playbook that it's been. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of disruption and changes in this playbook, but our recommendation is keep tracking the impressions, keep tracking the clicks, understand your rankings, keep trying to rank, track all of the web analytics that we've talked about, understanding how it's converting, what the revenue is. This is still a key component. We just want to add AI visibility on top of this, and it really builds on top of it, and it's not in place of it. So if we jump to the next slide here, this is really the key component. You want to be able to start measuring your AI visibility. And so we kind of think about this in 3 different steps. So you want to understand the brand mentions and AI responses. So measure your citation frequency, how often your domain or brand name is surfacing in these results. You want to also make sure you have the proper topic and prompt coverage that Michelle was talking about previously. And then you want to understand how you're ranking and how that compares to the competition. And then the final step where advanced measurement comes in, our recommendation is you want to incorporate these AI visibility signals into your media mix model, into your advanced measurement. So what we have been doing is leveraging the brand mentions as a proxy for AI-driven impressions in our media mix models. We then also pull in traditional SEO impressions into our models, so we capture the full organic picture. And then we use that, bring that in against all other marketing activity that you're doing so you can understand what the holistic impact is of your marketing performance, but also how these channels are influencing revenue. So that's the playbook that we've seen. And then this is an example output that I wanted to show. So this is just a sample, but if you look at the donut chart on the left, this is what an MMM can output in terms of attributed sales. So you can see I have organic search and Google AIO at the top there. But then what I think is interesting is looking at this trend. So in the trended view, you can see the dark blue line, kind of drops off towards the end, and the teal line comes in, which is Google AIO. This is the type of thing that as marketers, I think we all want to see. We want to see what change has happened with this shift and what the overall impact to revenue has been. And that's where this type of modeling can really bring you that full picture.
So yeah, we wanted to do another poll here. Let me, where did it go here? Right, let's get rid of this one here. Okay, now I can move to the next one. Sorry, I don't know where the other poll question went. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. So for this one, we would like to know which best describes your current approach to measuring AI search performance. So if you could put your answers in there, and then we'll, again, like we did last time, come back to the results once we get a volume of them in. So that we're going to have some time for some Q&A, but just to kind of wrap up, and we can go a lot deeper with the team here. But as we've described, you're not just losing share. You can't even see it, right? So the rankings don't necessarily equal recommendations. Number one ranking doesn't guarantee AI citation today. Your brand is likely underrepresented in AI answer sets today. We're seeing 60 to 80% of AI slots go to the top 3 brands. Early movers are locking out. We've heard from Michelle on that area. And the brands who measure first are going to defend their share first. So a couple great takeaways from the team here today. So before we jump in here, I'm going to actually share the results of this here. So looking back about the results, so which best describes your current approach to measuring AI search? We have none that said they could tie it back to revenue outcomes. 11% we can track traffic engagement, but not revenue. 56% we're exploring how to measure it, and 33% said we haven't even started yet. So let me see. I don't know if you guys can see that or not on the screen. All right. So before we open it up to Q&A, I know the team here at Crossfill and TapIn wanted to share a couple opportunities that if this is something you're struggling with for your own company or for your clients, some ways that they maybe could help, and then we'll move to some Q&A. So Satish, you want to talk first?
Yeah, so one of the things that we are happy to offer to the attendees here is an AI visibility audit. So if you are an agency, we would do that for 1 or 2 of your client accounts. And if you're a brand, we will do this visibility audit showing how you rank against your top competitors. So you just email us, sales@crossfill.com, and we will be happy to set you up. We also have a self-serve tool on our site, and we'll be happy to send that link to you, where you can actually go put in your information and you can see in real time what is happening with your brand.
And then Kirk?
Yeah. So TapIn, we're happy to offer this AI revenue mapping sprint. So what we're going to do is connect AI visibility signals to downstream revenue outcomes with you. And the first attendees that email me directly will receive 50% off this analysis.
Excellent. Great. So yeah, so if you have any more questions, I know there's a few in here that we'll get to, but any new ones that come up, definitely put them in the chat. We have some time, so we kind of go back to the top here and see some that maybe we missed originally. So we have one here about what I'm hearing is that content needs to be written to answer how search questions are asked. What are your thoughts on that? It's probably a Satish question.
Yeah, so one of the things that we do, like I said, is you look at GSE data and the keywords also, and see what are the topics and where are a lot of the conversations happening. And then we use that to generate recommendations on what you should do. And we didn't talk about this in a lot of detail, but one of the big part of what we do here at Crossfill is we not only tell you what to do, but we also show you what you need to do. So basically, for example, you need to take a content and you need to optimize it for LLM. Our system will automatically make the change. It will present it to you and say, this is your original, this is the optimized content. And what is the difference between the two content? And single click, you press and then it goes into production, and then we start measuring the impact of that change. And in many instances, we have seen huge improvements, anywhere from 2x to 20 plus improvements in there. And I think there was also a question for how we are doing this. That's our proprietary machine learning algorithms. Some of the things that we have done is, for example, we have reverse engineered patterns that these where Google, OpenAI, and so on have published like papers, and we know how the LLMs work. So we are able to, we are not doing any dark hat kind of a thing. It's really, think of it like you have a resume and you want to make sure that the resume is structured in a way that an ATS picks it up and you get in front of the hiring manager. So it's like that. So what we do is we know how these systems work. So we take your content and we structure it in a way that it gets picked up by the LLMs.
Great, thank you. This one's for Kirk. Kirk, question is, how do you build confidence in marketing decisions when a growing portion of the impact isn't directly observable?
Yeah, that's where I think, advanced measurement really comes into play. And I know I mentioned media mix modeling in the slides that I went through. And really what MMM is an impression-based attribution model. So you're getting away from all this click-based activity that's happening and trying to track people across the internet and, third-party cookies and everything that's been impacted through, privacy and browser changes. And you're trying to understand the trends and correlations between, the marketing activity that you're doing, where you can bring in some of those less visible channels from a click-based perspective and understand the impact that they're having on revenue. And so that's really the way that we try to approach that with what's happening in the marketing ecosystem today.
Kirk, there was a question, because I see this as well, where we can see in Google Analytics a UTM equals ChatGPT, right? When someone clicks on a citation within ChatGPT. Can you explain why that's not the full picture?
Yeah, I just think that, the way people are using the answer engines today is not necessarily to get to a website link or get to that citation. Now, obviously, that's going to happen, right? People are going to click through and come to the website, and you can see that in the referrals and in your web analytics tracking. But we want to understand, if they're researching or trying to learn more about something and they're becoming aware of the brand itself, there's an impression there and there's value to that. And that's really what we're trying to uncover with the modeling that we're doing. And we've seen this in action with several of our clients, where we've pulled some of this data into our models, and we can see that there is a halo effect in this impact that's happening from these AI answer engines.
Right. Along the same lines, there's a question from Chris here. Is the objective to be mentioned or to be recommended? Or I'm sorry, is the objective to be mentioned, to be recommended, or to be described in a way that aligns with your positioning?
Actually, maybe Michelle, if you want to give your thoughts, you have been in this.
My objective is to get a lead, which is really hard. I think, obviously we want to be recommended, right? And to be positive sentiment and to be the number one recommended brand when other brands are mentioned in the prompt. You also want, when someone types in your brand name, to be, what do you think about Cerebral Capital? We want that to be positioned on how we want to be positioned. A perfect example is we don't really target small businesses, right? But a lot of our business loans questions, small businesses are asking that on ChatGPT. And we don't necessarily want to show up, right, for someone who's looking for $10,000, right? And that's where Satish helps identify the prompts that you want to show up for that are specific to your business, and then developing answers that how you want to be positioned, right? So it's tracking on what's coming up when you do put it in there, and then trying to come up with answers that you want ChatGPT or any AI search to find. I don't know if that answered the question.
I think so. Question from Kelly Nice. Does advertising content affect visibility in AI recommendations? Have you seen advertising content do anything?
So advertising content, when it relates to if you're on Google PPC, I don't believe that affects ChatGPT and Perplexity, but I do believe it does affect AI overviews in Google. And from what I understand, I think this is an unofficial from Google, but if you're on Broad Match or AI Max campaigns in Google PPC, you have a better chance of showing up in AI overviews. That's the rumor.
Gotcha. Question here. Can we revisit the question about advice for developing your prompt list? Did I hear correctly that Google Analytics can offer signals for most important prompts to track? How often should prompt lists be updated? Any perspective there?
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, Michelle might have something to say, but GSE and GA are like great sources for that data. I see, Michelle, you're nodding. Do you want to add something to that?
No, other than it helps you identify quality prompts, quality topics, things that are hitting your site that is turning into revenue or good leads. You can start there and then develop prompts starting there. It's a starting point, I would say.
Great. Can you elaborate on how best to structure content or AI visibility?
So there's a lot of things in there, and I talked about it in one of the slides. In fact, if you want to go back to that slide, Christian, we can put that up again, where I think it's a few slides before. Yeah. So sorry, we went too far. One more. There you go. So the previous slide, how you get into the answer. So there are things that you can do from a structure and content and how the content is structured. So there are things like JSON schemas that you want to make sure that is appropriately structured, how your site XML is structured, and so on. But a big thing is also the semantic relevance, right? So when you create the content, you want to make sure that the content is relevant to the question that's being asked. Because, as we like to say, LLMs are lazy. They take whatever is being fed to them, of course, with authority, and they make sure that they try to make sure that it is as high quality as possible. But they take that and then they synergize it and spit it out. So that is going to be one of the big things that you want to make sure that is showing up in your content.
Great. Another one around, where'd it go? You reference visibility frequently, but isn't that only part of the battle? Isn't it equally or even more important that when you are mentioned, that AI describes you in a way that aligns with how you're positioned? Your brand. What if you were mentioned but described incorrectly or even positioned being inferior?
Yeah, it's a great question. Again, I'll give my thoughts, and then Michelle and Kirk might want to add their thoughts. A lot of what the AI is pulling is from the sources. So first, you want to make sure that your own content is appropriately structured. The second thing is, like, it's not very often that in a general search that AI will mention you in a negative fashion, right? So, for example, if you say, "What is the best?" My example, best running shoe for plantar fasciitis. You're not going to see something that says, "Do not buy the shoe." AI will only recommend like the three things that is there right now. If you ask a follow-up question like, "What about this brand?" then it might tell you, "No, that one is not generally recommended for this because X, Y, and Z," right? So the negative sentiment usually comes when somebody is specifically asking about that particular brand. It makes sense, right? So if you're asking a question, if it doesn't think that you are a good answer, it's not even going to put you out there in terms of the answer, right? Michelle or Kirk, is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
Nothing for me. No.
Okay. Got a question about social media engagement. Does that affect AI visibility at all?
Michelle, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, in my experience, just with us, Reddit really helps. I have not seen an impact of other social media, Facebook or Meta or advertising on those sites. I have not seen that impact. Um, but I don't know if I'm the expert to answer. That's just my own personal experience.
Yeah. And we can tell you what we have seen is Reddit makes an impact. At least historically, there is some evidence that that is not as important now as what it used to be. LinkedIn is frequently cited. It really depends on the industry. I would also need to add that, if you're in an industry where you're like B2B, maybe some of these channels are more important. You can have, things like Amazon reviews. So one of the brands that we worked with, they were very surprised about the visibility that one of their competitors had, which they saw as a really small brand. They had like an outsized 80% visibility because that other brand is very active on Amazon. So they had a lot of reviews. So the LLMs picked that up. YouTube is also another thing that's can be cited. Again, really depends on your industry, really depends on the vertical that you're in, but a lot of this UGC can be very important. The other thing, don't forget, is your trade publication. So if you're in fashion, things like work, home and garden, depending on like, design and fashion, what you're talking about, all those sources can be very impactful also, which is why we tell you, we run the queries, we tell you what are the citations, where are they coming from, what is important, and then are these third-party sources where you can go influence that content, or those things like YouTube, should you put out content there? So those are all things that will come from our recommendations of what would have the biggest impact.
Great. Had another one here. As AI-driven visibility grows, how should organizations rethink budget allocation among paid SEO/AI search and brand investment? Maybe Kirk, you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So I think, again, kind of going back to the holistic measurement conversation, right? There's a lot of activity happening for most brands today, and it's only getting more complex in terms of, the ability to measure those things. And so if you're a brand that's been, spending a lot in paid media, you've been doing traditional SEO, now you're doing AI-based search, you've got to be able to have a way to understand the impact of all of those activities and then be able to determine how to prioritize your resources and where you should allocate those resources based on the return that you're seeing. And so, if you're seeing an improving trend in AI search, like things are starting to work, then it's like, hey, let's prioritize our resources there and make sure we're focused on those areas. And so again, that's where it's critical to be able to bring the full picture together and see how it's all working together and what the impact of each individual activity is.
Great, thanks. Couple new ones came in. I'm hearing PR and media relations can be an essential part of your AI visibility strategy. Experience there?
I would say the big experience there is the sites that have authority that are influencing the LLM answers. So there was a question about, is there a way to tell what the review sites are the most influential for LLMs. So that's part of the analysis that we do. So we tell you what are the sites that you're influencing. So for example, if it is something like the Vogue or InStyle, you can go and do some placements with them, and that PR absolutely can make a huge difference in terms of how your brand is showing up in the AI answers.
Got it.
We have not seen general press releases that go out on the wire have an impact of our company. That has not worked for us, FYI. But we have not had like a publishing in like New York Times or anything like that that would be considered an authority. So I don't know about that.
Right. Another question, any advice for improving authority score and increasing backlinking?
So I would say to that a lot of work that has been done in traditional SEO, like backlinking and the authority score, does influence because you do have, when the LLMs, they are also using things like RAG, where they do a search and augment the answers that the AI engines are providing. So whatever has been done in that does help, but it's becoming increasingly more on the semantic relevance as opposed to the backlinking and so on, right? So certain sources, we talked about Wikipedia, I mean, they have very high authority, and that makes a big difference, of course, right? But not everybody is going to have a Wikipedia page or have content in there that is going to answer all the questions about your brand. So which is where the second part of what are the sites that are influencing these action answers and your own content, the user generated content, things like that becomes a lot more important.
Great. I know we shared some stats up front, but anything off the top of your guys' head about the growth trajectory, what it's looking like for GEO compared to SEO? I don't know if we have any stats.
I mean, from our experience and what we've seen with our clients when we pull and incorporate this data into our model, really the one AI platform that's popping is Google AIO, right? So we're seeing a lot of traction for brands within Google AIO, within our models, and then they're taking those insights and building their optimization plans around that. So we haven't necessarily seen some of the other answer engines enter into the model for brands, but definitely at Google AIO, we're seeing that have a pretty dramatic impact.
Great. I think we got time for a couple more. What is the biggest factor for determining semantic relevance?
Yeah, it's not one, there is a bunch. And one of the things that we do is we take your content and we give you a scorecard on how it's performing against all those the things that LLMs consider. You can also do a version of that by going to like ChatGPT, for example, and saying like, hey, here is my content. Tell me how I'm doing in terms of how LLMs look at it. And sometimes it might hallucinate, but often it gives you a pretty good answer. And we have actually shown, when we improve the content, we put it through the same thing, and then ChatGPT says like, yeah, this has improved in all these respects. But you can do a first cut of that just by going and giving your content to ChatGPT and asking it to give you a scorecard on that. We think, a much better job than what they do, but that could be a quick first cut.
Sure. Yeah, I thought maybe to close things out, Satish, obviously we have a lot of agencies on here, and I'd love to hear Kirk too, but like how can you be a partner to agencies for their clients? Maybe just walk through a little bit about how maybe a typical kind of use case, and then Kirk would love to hear yours as well.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. So our platform is built for agencies, so you can actually go and have multiple accounts, multiple brands, and we will show you a dashboard, and you can go within the brands and work with those. And again, would be happy to describe that offering in more detail if you reach out to us.
Sure.
Yeah, and we really have two use cases. The first one that's worked really well has been more of a white label type solution with us. And so we partner directly with the agency. The agency ends up using our software and our platform and our recommendations, and they interact directly with the client. And so we sit behind the scenes, we work with them on all the data work, the ingestion, producing the results, our app and reporting, and then they actually go to the client with those recommendations and then execute on those recommendations with the client. The other use case that we've had is more of just, we have a partnership with the agency, but we are more hands-on directly with the client. So we'll do a lot of the client interfacing, working with them directly on the onboarding, working them on with all the results and recommendations. And the agency is still involved in that, but we're doing a lot more of like the direct interfacing with the client. So both of those options we've had a lot of success with. So I'd love to, have the opportunity to talk with any of the agencies that may be interested in that.
Great. Well, I think we nailed just about all the questions, at least that I could see here. So yeah, this was great. Obviously, a very top of mind topic. A lot of really great questions here, ever evolving. We got two great partners, so I'm happy and glad that we were able to share this with our community here. If there's any questions, you know how to get a hold of Crossfill or tap in the future, and a couple great offers as well. So other than that, Kurt, Shell, Satish, thank you so much.